Welcome everyone. I'd like to dedicate this year, the first year of the amazing month of Adar, where we are to be marbe b'simcha, ein simcha ela Torah, but there's other meanings for simcha as well, and we want people to be joyous about many, many things in this month, despite some of the concerning things that are unfolding around us. But it's our job to be marbe b'simcha, and I therefore want to wish a refuah shalema. And let's keep thinking about them, to the various chatufim, either the ones that have been freed. I think one of the girls went through our 2 operations today from her wounds during captivity. So we must remember, this is coming into Purim, which is Parshas Zachor, this coming Shabbos, and therefore it's incumbent on us to remember. We must remember. We must jog our memories. I spoke about it a little bit last week. Sometimes that very, very painful things are there to jog our memories, to jolt us out of our complacency. Similarly to the story of Megillah Esther, in which the Jews, according to Haman, were asleep. We were asleep. And Achashverosh says, aren't you worried about the God of the Jews? I mean, look what he did to Paro. Look what he did to all of his enemies and how he vanquished them. I don't want to be vanquished. So he said, don't worry, the Jews are sleeping. They fell asleep. I lulled them to sleep with my wine at your coming out party, Achashverosh. So Jews, it's time to be awake. I must start by saying I had a little such awakening just today. A young man came to see me, and he started to tell me that a very nice guy, professional, okay, no yarmulke, that's fine, but a very, very nice young man, soft-spoken. And he tells me he's a survivor of Nova. Now, for a survivor of Nova, this guy was serene. He had his act together. He was working. And he didn't seem to have any emotional disturbance. He asked me what I did. I said, I'm a rabbi and an MSW. And he says, oh, a social worker helped me so much. And he looked to me completely untraumatized, except one thing. So I asked him, so we started blessing each other on the way out the door. And I said, are you married? He goes, no. So he says to me, and he had a couple of little earrings in there. He goes, I can't find a nice girl. What are you looking for? A nice girl. I said, chaser, nice girls? And he says to me, but Tel Aviv can. So I said, no problem, come to Beit Shemesh. We got plenty of girls over here, Yerushalayim. And, I'm not Makabel either that in Tel Aviv there aren't nice girls. But that's what he said, and it made me start to think that here's a guy who is somewhat wounded in his ego, and maybe he doesn't think he can compete with the Knackers in Tel Aviv for the desirable shidduchim. He's wounded a little bit. He is wounded. And it occurred to me that surviving Nova is a miracle. I told him he's a miracle. He told me that he walked 20 kilometers. He ran 20 kilometers to escape on foot. I said, that's an open miracle. And then something struck me, and I said, he did survive Nova, but in order to avert a real tragedy in his life, he must get married and raise a Jewish family. He must be under the wings, the protective wings of the Shechina, which are symbolized, of course, in this week's Parsha, past week's Parsha, in the Aron Kodesh, protective wings of the Kruvim, which, of course, symbolizes the marriage of Hashem and the Jewish people, as we've discussed. There's something very deep there. I will explain it to you. I'm just giving this introduction. We have so much to cover, but I want to explain something very profound, I think, about the Nova issue. Why were people there? Why were so many young people there? Yes, they like music, but what were they really looking for? They're looking for love. They're looking for a partner. They're looking for somebody to call their own. And the rules are very difficult because so much competition and everything's very open, and there are no particular values that you're working with necessarily. Everyone comes with their own different backgrounds and stuff, and it's just difficult. And And what a tragedy that we should go from Nova, and that these kids who did survive and who will inspire other people to come, they have to inspire themselves and other people to come closer to Hashem and to get married and create meaningful lives as Jews, as Israelis in Eretz Yisrael. Is it otherwise? The tragedy is not over. The tragedy will continue, and the greater tragedies of so many people not getting married because they say, I can't find the right girl. So I'm going to bookmark this. It inspired me. They say we need a massive campaign of Jewish marriage education, because the reason why people are not successfully married, don't get married, or not shouldn't don't get married, but are reluctant to get married sometimes, or that there's a high incident of divorce. And Israel, actually, it's much better, I think, in many ways. There is a more of a push to get married and have children in other places. Definitely much better than the West. And because there are values. Being Jewish is a value. Being Israeli is a value. There's something to base yourself on. But still, many individuals fall through the cracks. And this, to me, is a tragedy equal to Nova. And then just how I felt. I said, you can survive Nova, but we got to repair what Nova was supposed to be for you, a place to find a partner with whom you could build a life. Okay, it didn't look like that. They had the big fat Buddha over there and so on and so forth, and they were shimmying to whatever music they were shimmying to. But yeah, deep down, what do you want? Love, connection. That's what they're looking for. That's what all the Israelis, the secular Israeli kids, are looking for. And we need to be able to teach it and also embody it. Oh, such a big job. Okay, but that's the symbol of the Kruvim. So moving on from there, that I want to present to you a simple question, a question that is so timely in order to understand. Okay, so we are in the week of Zachor, and of course, Nova Gaza is front and center for us. But there was also another thing that was going on, which was the Zelensky-Trump meeting in the White House. Now, what was that all about? Trump was seeking peace. He has a policy, which I begin to really fathom somewhat, that if you don't have both sides getting value, you're not going to have any sort of deal. And also, he doesn't want to be ripped off. So he had to deal with Zelensky saying, listen, give us the minerals. We'll give you the protection. We'll end the war and everything will be great. Zelensky is an actor. Okay, remember, he's an actor. This was an act. Why did he refuse the deal? It was so logical. It was so inspired. And the answer is, he is playing a role. And the role that he's playing is to keep the world in utter turmoil. And people who fund him, and I'm not going conspiracy theory on you, just look it up. He made his fortune, and he was selected to play this role as an actor by George Soros. So you understand that there are forces that do not want the world to come together to create that wholesome environment where people will say, Lo yisagoy el goy cherev, liyamudu milchama, which is what, people are trying to accomplish. And what's the reason they don't want that? Because a world of turmoil is easier to control than the world of solid values and stability. When you have stable, solid societies, you can't do anything that you want. But if you would like to step into chaos and create your order, yes. That's why there's a desire to undo America, that's Trump has been sent by Hashem, I have to believe, and by the will of many good people, to see if they can turn the tide. I hope he does. I mean, he's certainly trying. Will he? I don't know. Will it end up being a Zelensky Misa? That he's going to have all these plans and he's going to be butting his head against the wall, and then the wars will continue, the corruption will continue, etc., etc., etc. Remains to be seen. But I do think we have to dive in that direction. Now, to a question that I thought about. One of the most organized, orderly, sane places, of course, representing the marriage of Hashem and Klal Yisrael is the Mishkan, which is the subject of this week's and last week's and all of the Torah readings in the period of Purim. Why? Why does the Mishkan have to do with Purim? Well, why? It's always that way. Okay, you're reading about this week the Kohen Gadol's garments, etc. And that nice stable situation where the Shekhinahs are there and everybody's camped around, and it's so nice, and it's such a beautiful society. And you got Moshe Rabbeinu, and you got the Sanhedrin, and everything is just incredible. And the Kohen Gadol is going to fix up any problems between us and Hashem. Fail safe. It's just perfect. It's perfection. And it comes with an amazing amount of details that could make most people tremendously confused. Even to go through a simple Rashi and the construction of the Big Day Kahuna, today you have picture guides and books and art scroll. And without that, it would be, I think, to the average person, and maybe to even the more than average person, incomprehensible. We just don't know what the words are trying to portray to us. Thank God we have a lot of aids and guides and gorgeous books, and we can see in intricate detail. I want to ask you a question. Why the intricate detail? Why do I need to know down to the very last socket and bolt and strain of wool and linen and why? Why is that what Hashem wanted? Right? Isn't the important thing the Kodesh Kodashim and the Aron Kodesh and the menorah and the Shulchan and the Mizbeach, and then that's it. Why are we going to so many details about the Yirios and the pictures of them, of the Kruvim, the lions and the eagles? No shore, by the way, because of the idea that it was supposed to be a repair for Egel Hazav, so they left out the cow part. Okay, but on the Mishkan, you had on the Kodesh Kodashim curtains, they were inside and outside, 2 Kruvim, a lion and an eagle. Okay, come on, like the menorah, that's where it's at. The Mizbeach HaKtoras, that's the action. Okay, Parnasa, the Shulchan, the Kodesh Kodashim, the Mizbeach. I get it. But what is this all about? The construction of the Yirios and the Krushim and how they put them together, and every knob and every socket. And Moshe Rabbeinu couldn't even account for some of the silver, and he was trying to figure it out until he realized they used it for the sockets. This is all coming up in the next couple of parshos. Why? And to accentuate that point, Shlomo HaMelech does not stick to the rules at all. When he builds the Beis HaMikdash, you know how many Kruvim he made? Here, in our parsha it says, Rashi brings from the Medrash, if they would dare make the Kruvim out of silver, Hashem would consider it avodah zarah. If they would dare make double Kruvim on each end, 4 Kruvim, it would be considered avodah zarah. It has to be this way or the highway. There is no room for deviation from the instructions of the Mishkan. Not one iota. So how is it possible that if you look in the book of Malachim, you will see that Shlomo HaMelech created 2 giant, 20-foot tall Kruvim hovering over the Mizbeach, made out of wood. Wood? What's wood about? Nothing is wood. Wood is covered over. It's either covered over by gold. It's either covered over by some tapestry or skins. This cannot be. What did Shlomo do? In addition to that, Shlomo HaMelech built 10, count them, 10 menorot. 10. Why? There's only one. It's only one in the Mishkan. You cannot deviate from God's instructions, chas v'shalom. You can't. So what was Shlomo doing? Where was this coming from? In addition to that, he built something extremely bizarre. He built something called the Yam Shel Shlomo. The Yam Shel Shlomo was a massive reservoir. It was basically a giant copper basin filled with water. So that was the water source availability for everything that needed to go on in the Mishkan. But it was resting on 12 giant oxen. This was a magnificent work of art. But what in the world does it mean? And if Hashem didn't want the ox to be a figure on the Mishkan, why would Shlomo put 10, 12 of them under the Yam Shel Shlomo? just requires, and listen, this all the Mefarshim are dealing with. This is a giant discussion. I'm just presenting the question to pick your curiosity a little bit. So, what was going on over here? What does this all mean? What's it represent? And second of all, why do we need these images of lions and eagles and is that looks to me very suspicious. Just like you're very careful about the kruvim, and they were very careful about the kruvim in animal form. And where's those come from? So here's a basic idea that everybody says, that Klal Yisrael saw the image of Hashem's chariot, the Merkava, which is carried by the four seraphim, the archangels that bear his chariot, as it were. And go to Yecheskel, Perek Aleph, for details. That's called Maisa Merkava. It's a major subject in Kabbalah, according to Rabbi Kaplan. You can't even be a Navi until you get past that Perek of the chariot of Hashem and the four beasts, the four images, the head of the man, the head of the eagle, the head of a lion, and the head of a shore. Mystical significance. It has secrets beyond belief. I'm not going to go into it now, but just one thing, you realize that it also represents the major, in the wheel of the Chodshei Hashanah. Those animals are associated with various mazalos. The lion is Leo, and Taurus is the bull, and the eagle is actually November Cheshvan, and the human face is going on the Mazel of Klal Yisrael, which is Mazel Dli, February, for those keeping score. So the secrets of creation and Hashem's Hashgacha Pratis are all in there. Okay, fine. But if you're going to leave out the shore because of Cheda Egel, you don't want to bring it up right now, then what's the point of bringing the other two? Or, and what's going on? Okay. Second question. So that's emanating from the parsha. Emanating from the parsha is this, and I'll summarize the question. The incredible detail of the Yerios, the construction of the Mishkan, down to its last bulb and bump and flower, doesn't seem to carry forward into Bayit Rishon. Why? Why not? Why isn't it exactly the same? Asuli Mikdash v'shachanti b'socham is the mitzvah of building a Beis HaMikdash according to Sefer HaChinuch, and you must follow the specifications. So why didn't we see that? And to such an extent that in Bayit Sheni, when King Herod rebuilt it during its last epoch, he asked the rabbis, give me the dimensions, give me everything, and they built it according to Nevuah. But it had elements of Bayis Rishon and Bayis Shlishi, because they had already the Navi Yecheskel, and Yecheskel gives the prophecies of the future Beit HaMikdash, which is different in dimension, way different in dimension. It's a massive, larger scale, and so this is an evolving thing, and the transitional Beit HaMikdash, the second Beit HaMikdash was a mixture. I thought it's just Torah is Torah. Torah is immutable. Torah is never forgotten. Torah is Torah. You can't mess with Torah. If it's in the Torah, that's what it is. You follow it. Torah is Moshe, according to the interpretation of Torah Baal Peh. It's troubling to think that. What do you mean? There was room for interpretation. There was room for creative exploration here. These are mitzvos. You got to do them straight up. Okay, what happened? And what's the significance? And now, let's talk about Megillah. So we know that we're approaching, this is Parshat Zachor, we're approaching Purim. In Megillah itself, the Rambam says, lahalacha, okay, the following shocking statement. It's a shock. At the end of Hilchos Megillah, Perek Beis, he says, Kol Sifrei Neviim v'Kol Ksuvim Atidim Libatel. In the end of days, there will be a bittul of all of the books of the Navi. What? Yecheskel? I mean, he's the one that gave you the Beis HaMikdash Shlishi plans. No longer relevant. Yeshaya HaNavi? How could you invalidate Yeshaya HaNavi, the Navi of comfort? Yonah, the story of Yonah and Yom Kippur. No, they're all canceled. Chutz mi Megillas Esther. V'arehi kayemes. This is based on Yerushalmi. The Rambam Paskin's actually like Rish Lakish here, but Rish Lakish is not arguing with Rabbi Yochanan in this regard. The Yerushalmi teaches that Megillah Esther is the exception. It will be Kayemes Kechamisha Chumshei Torah. Whoa. I didn't know that a Navi or something written Baruch HaKodesh, Chazal tell us Esther Baruch HaKodesh Nemra. Okay, she was a prophetess. We'll grant you that. I didn't know that something that's a prophecy could reach the eternal level of Torah. Wow. What does that mean? That means even after Mashiach comes, we'll still be observing Purim. That's the pasuk they bring. Yemei Purim lo yavat lushen nemar. It says in the Megillah itself, Yemei v'mei hapurim ha'ela lo yavru mitoch hayudim v'zichron lo yasuf mizaram. There will be no end to the observance of Purim, whereas there may be changes regarding other observances, which we should have yet to understand what. Right away, the Ravid, who's who critiques the Rambam based on the teachings of the rabbis of France, Germany, Provence, he says, Lo yivatel davar mikol hasfarim ein sefer she'ein bo limud. In other words, you need these psarim. Avakach amru afilu yivatlu shar svarim milahakrois bahem Megillah lo tivatel milakrosim. He says, I will agree, I will concede to the Rambam one point. We may not take out the Haftorah and read Yirmiyahu anymore. We're not going to focus on the Churban of Bayis Rishon. We're not going to focus necessarily on the chastisement of the kings of Israel during that Kufa of Bayis Rishon. We may choose different things, but one thing we for sure will read in public setting will be Megillah Esther. I want to know why. Really, how could Megillah Esther outflank Yeshaya Hanavi, Yirmiyahu Hanavi, all these other Nevi'im, Yonah? Okay, what's the meaning of this? So I'd like to present to you the following concept. Okay, so regarding the issue of the big day of the future base of Mikdash, there's a brisker commentary based on trying to interpret this machloket about what's going to be happening in the future times. All right, why is it that Purim lasts, and why is it that other things don't? So the Yerushalmi Megillah is a very nice article about this by Gideon Rothstein. You can find it online. He brings the source of the Rambam as the Yerushalmi Megillah, where Rabbi Yochanan says all of Nach will be Mevatel. That's the Rambam source, and except from Megillah Esther, which will be like Torah itself. And then someone attempted to explain what is the dispute between the Rambam and the Ravid. So the grid, Rabbi Yosef of the Soloveitchik clan, right? In Chedushei HaGrid, this is the Rav, Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, Rosh Hashiva at YU. He said an incredible chiddush. We really won't be needing these books anymore based on the Rambam. He was interpreting the Rambam. Soloveitchik clan are their great brisker method is predicated on interpreting Rambam as vis-a-vis other Rishonim. But what does the Ravid hold? So this is what it is. He said that we will return to a place where the Torah can once again be interpreted. Now let's understand what this means. We know that there was a Masorah of Torah Shebal Peh. It went verbally from one generation to another generation, until it didn't, because the Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi felt that the Mishnah and all of his teachings were going to be lost, and therefore he codified them and he wrote them down. The subsequent generations, the Safarayim, the Amoraim, and everybody else, they were interpreting the Mishnayos until they got to the Gemara. Now, if you look, for example, on today's Daf HaYomi, you will see incredibly complex derivations from various psukim to determine what punishment should be given to a person who had an inappropriate relationship. Do they get sreifa, which is internal burning of organs, or do they get chenek, which is asphyxiation? The the detail and the brilliance of their analysis of the texts and how they understand principles of the Yud Gimel Midos Shatan Midrash Espo, the 13 principles which are included in our Siddur, which Moshe Rabbeinu revealed to the Jewish people. By the way, he leaked them to the Jewish people. He gave us the tools so we ourselves could derive halachos from the Torah itself, because the Torah needs to be applied in every generation. So, for example, in the generation where we have automation and which we have medical questions that can boggle the mind, we need people poskim who can derive the psak. Says Rav Soloveitchik, we will apparently, in the times of Mashiach, undo the damage of the Golus. Remember how Rabbi Yehuda Nasi was afraid the Mishnah was getting lost because of the dispersion of the diaspora? Guess what? When we have Kibbutz Golios, and we can anticipate a reinvigoration and a return to Nevuah, which means that we will be able on our own, not me and you necessarily, but the great ones of the generation will be able to once again look at the Torah, and in this case, also Megillah Esther, we'll see why, and derive laws that maybe no one had extracted before because we closed down the shop. We shut down that process with the termination of the Mishnah and the termination of the Gemara some 200 years later. Nobody can do that anymore. Nobody can. It's very, very clear. Chaim Brisker explains this, that our job today, since the closure of the Talmud, and certainly since the Shulchan Aruch, is just to understand the words of our predecessors and try to apply them halacha. But we can't bring anything new. We can't have any derivations from Torah itself. However, Esther did. Now let's understand. Esther is after Churban Bayis Rishon, right? At the end of the period of Nevuah. And what she does, she says to Chazal, Kisvuni Ledoros. Guess what? I want you to write a book of Megillah Esther that will never be forgotten and will have the level of Torah itself. And you know what? They struggled to agree with her. But she was right, of course. And later they justified it. But what Esther did is a taste of the future. You understand where we're going to go back to. We bookmark things from Esther, which you actually can look at the events of the day and look into the Torah and say, guess what? This was a war against Amalek. And Chazal said, what kind of war against Amalek? We had a war by Yeshua, we had a war by Shaul HaMelech, and I got that. But you, Esther, since when are you waging a war against Amalek? And the answer is no. There's a remez in the pasuk of actually three. 1 second, please. Hello. תראה, אני באמצע שיעור. Okay, bye. I'm sorry, you're disturbing the shiur. Okay, so if the Soloveitchik says an amazing thing, what the Rambam means is that it's a return to a level that we had previously, but lost through the length of the Golus. And that's why Mashiach is coming back. We're returning Ruach HaKodesh. We're returning Nevuah. It's an amazing, amazing thing. Okay? Now, the Ravid said, no, I mean, it's not necessarily the case. Rav Soloveitchik himself taught that there would never have been a Hanukkah if not Purim. In fact, in the construction of his laws of Hanukkah, laws of Megillah and Hanukkah, he puts them together as 4 chapters. Chapter 1 and 2, Megillah. Chapter 3 and 4, Hanukkah. Why? So I heard him say, it was on the strong shoulders of Chachamim. In other words, what Esther did, and the Anshe Knesset HaGedolah, the last members of the prophecy, of the team of prophecy, was later copied by the Chashmonaim. Not to the extent that they could get a book written. Sorry, that was not happening. But the understanding that there was a yontif d'Rabbanan called Hanukkah, that was an insight that was nearly prophetic. And they only could justify it by saying, look what Esther did. She did something completely new. What right do you have to add to the Torah? The Torah says very clearly, Lo tos bal tosif, do not add. Lo sigwa, do not subtract. Yes, but there's going to be new revelations, not that are chas v'shalom from new sources, but new interpretations from the Torah itself. You follow me? The Torah itself will yield its fruit to fertile minds who have the capacity to understand it. That's what we're going through. Okay, now that's on one level. As far as the details of the Mishkan, we have to understand something, and it's a related concept. Things change. Esther showed that things changed. Esther showed that there's a need to create a Zechiras Amalek that carries forward what the Torah began, but that will last with us until Mashiach. It's not a new concept, Milchemes Amalek, but it's a new application. Similarly, the Beis HaMikdash of Shlomo HaMelech was not Chas v'Shalom challenging the details of the Mishkan. The Mishkan took its form because of the pressing needs of that hour. The basic components are there, and they always will be. The Kodesh Kodashim, the Kruvim, the Shulchan, the Mizbeach, it's always going to be there. What varied was what was on the outside. These Kruvim that they saw, right, were necessary. And you don't want to know why? Because the Jews had just seen a whole thing of the God's chariot, the essential and primary nevuah. They saw it in their own eyes, and they wanted to connect to it. And Hashem wanted to give it to them. And that's why Hashem said, okay, but under certain conditions. I'll give you Kruvim. I'll let you, but remember, they're my Kruvim, and do not, chas v'shalom, deviate on them. Hashem needed a way to help these people, a new nation, interpret what they saw in their own eyes in the context of their relationship in the Beis HaMikdash. So too Shlomo HaMelech. Listen to this. Shlomo HaMelech understood, and eventually the Medrash that says he actually received this as a Kabbalah of Torah Shabbat Peh from Moshe Rabbeinu, that there had to be two giant wooden kruvim inside the Kodesh Kodashim. He didn't make it up. What does it represent? Think about it. Eitz. Eitz Chaim Hi. Lama Chazikim Bo. Imein Kemach Ein Torah. Imein Torah Ein Kemach. Guess what, guys? There isn't going to be any Torah unless we have the land and the wealth to support it. This message is relevant for Shlomo Melech's time. It's not relevant for the Mishkan where they're sitting and eating mun that's raining down from the skies. There's no Yisachar Zvulun at that time. Yisachar Zvulun it starts later with the Kibush of Eretz Yisrael, when things concretize. That doesn't mean that this is a deviation from the Mishkan. It just wasn't relevant yet. We hadn't had the Hechatimsa. We didn't ask the Shaila, what should we do in COVID? Davin, not Davin, wear a mask, not wear a mask. We didn't have those Shailas. If you ask Rabbi Chanan, Spector from from 1800s, the greatest posek ador, what should we do when COVID strikes? He won't know what you're talking about. He doesn't understand. It's not relevant. It's not the era in which these questions were relevant. So too, the Torah doesn't change. It just gets applied to new and various circumstances. That's a massive, massive chiddush. Okay, but that's what it is. That's why Shlomo was able to build a giant Yam Shel Shlomo on 12 oxen. Oxen, they don't belong in the Mishkan. Of course they don't belong to the Mishkan because they're just coming through Chet Egel. It's not relevant for them. Torah is relevant for each and every era and each and every shaila in its context. But when you come to the Beis HaMikdash, and we're now in Eretz Yisrael, and the shore is symbolizing Parnasa, it's symbolizing Yosef HaTzadik, who is the symbol of the shore, and he's providing the pure water for the Beis HaMikdash, and it's a kind of a reference to the concept and principle of Mashiach ben Yosef, and even more so, the fixing of Chet Egel 12 times over, one for each tribe. You follow me? You follow me? Shlomo Melech saying, thank God we finally have fixed this problem. We've come a long way from Cheder Ego, and now we can proudly display the kior, which is the intention that all the 12 tribes will be connected to Yosef HaTzadik and not Chas v'Sholom to an Egel. We will have the context, we will have the clarity, and we will avoid the mistakes. We will know how to make kruvim, and we won't make the mistake to flip into avodah zarah. That's a very, very intricate dance. How do you have the kruvim and it doesn't slip into avodah zarah? Well, we know the kruvim actually did have certain animation to them, which was the point that they would embrace like children. I'm going to get into a little side point, but this is incredible. Understand something. If the kruvim represent the actual love affair between Hashem and Klal Yisrael, as the Forshim suggest, and the inner sanctum of that love affair is the Kodesh Kodashim, then what's their embrace all about? Their embrace is like Shir Shir. Follow me? That's the Shir Shir. That's the actual interplay of everything that's going on. And therefore, its corollary in this world is intimacy, physical intimacy. And that's what they portrayed when everything was going well. But they were children. Wow. What does this teach us? That teaches you that holy intimacy is playful, is innocent, is loving, laughing, caring. That is an incredible, incredible insight. That's the holy way. That's the holiness of it. It's play. It's playmates, innocent playmates that just are having a relationship together in the most purest and holiest way. That is incredible insight. Now I'm going to go for the jugular here. Okay, you ready? Megillah Esther remains. I'll give you an alternative experience, alternative approach. Megillah Esther remains because it is the end game. It is actually the story of the triumph of mankind at the end. Let me show you how. In the Garden of Eden, we had three characters, the Nachash, Adam, and Chava. They each failed. The Nachash was seeking immorality. The other two, Chava and Adam, were seeking either kavod, which was a form of idolatry, and also taiva, just falling into one's other sort of passion. We say in Pirkei Avos, kina, kavod, v'taiva, ma'avir mes adam and olam. Kina is jealousy, kavod is self-aggrandizement, right? And taiva, giving into one's lusts. This is the challenge of mankind. That's what we're here to fix. Look at Megillah Esther for a second. Where is their immorality in Megillah Esther? Well, take a look at the first chapter and Achashverosh's parties and Achashverosh gathering the basulos. If there's ever more, how shall I say, stench of utter illicit yuckiness, it's Megillah Esther. He's the biggest, I hate to say, I'm not going to say. Ay. Okay. But unfortunately, there are some Jews today that have become paradigms of all these problems, and there's no accident in that either. I want to go into right now. One of the big things is Nebuch. There was a Yid who became the whole paradigm of corruption in terms of intimacy and sexuality and harming people and children. He's under investigation, and the whole world with him, including Israeli leaders. And you have to ask yourself a question: oy vey, I'm hiding my head under a rock somewhere. Why does it have to be a Yid? Can't somebody else mess up? Why does Soros have to be a Jew that wants to destroy the world and put it into anarchy and told Zelensky to tell Trump to jump in a lake so that we'll have war and not peace? Does it have to be a Jew? Like, give me a break. Why can't it be a goy? Let it be a goy. Why is the forces in Congress and the Senate, who are the most, how shall I say, being caught red-handed with improper conduct, political nonsense, lies, theft? Why does it have to be a Jew and another Jew? a Jew from California and a Jew from New York. Please, Hashem, save us. I mean, really, if I weren't Jewish, you could look at those people. I'm not going to name them by names, but you could become an anti-Semite just looking at them. I get it. And the answer is, don't think it's an accident. A Jew is here to be a kli for HaKadosh Baruch Hu to get the world's attention, one way or the other. Hashem is going to use them to broadcast extreme messages of I am here. Okay? It's not the failure of the Jew, it's the greatness of the Jew. Because a Jewish soul, only a Jewish soul can come up with this stuff, can find these levels of aberration and corruption. You have to be a genius, an absolute genius. You have to have the soul and the brain of an Einstein. You're never going to figure out how to create these scenarios. So that's my little interpretation there. But let's go back to Megillah Esther for a minute. Why does it last forever? Because it speaks the story of man. Gili Arayos gets fixed in the relationship of whom? Mordechai, Esther, and Achashverosh. It goes right into the depths of a horrible nefila and lifts it up. And out of that, eventually, that sacrifice that was made, that they literally, Mordechai and Esther had to sacrifice their marriage. And what ended up was a child that would execute the building of the Beis HaMikdash. It's the repair. There was a tikkun of what was going on. That's in terms of immorality, intimacy. What about Avodah Zarah? Tell me where Avodah Zarah exists in the Megillah Esther. Easy. Haman himself. He wore an Avodah Zarah. He made himself into an Avodah Zarah. The defeat of Haman at the hands of Mordechai is the triumph of mankind over self-aggrandizing idolatry. And Mordechai and Esther are the models. And finally, this is a shocking one. Well, money, we know, was a key factor in Megillah. Corruption with money was a key factor with Megillah Esther. Where do you see that? Easy. Haman tried to pay off Achashverosh to kill the Jews, right? Let me send it to the royal treasuries. It's kind of like UNRWA, just keep the money coming. Let's go. More aid trucks and more aid trucks. We'll end up giving billions of dollars to people. That's ultimate corruption. But it even goes to more. And this answers an incredible question about the very end of the Megillah. The last part of Megillah Esther speaks about the fact that Mordechai, given the opportunity to run the kingdom, establishes a tariff. Did you ever hear about tariffs lately? All the world is talking about is how much tariffs. What are we putting a tariff on Canada and a tariff on Mexico and a tariff on everybody and China and Europe? That's what Mordechai did. Mordechai imposed tariffs on all Iyei. That's what Megillah says. Why do I need to know that? Why do I need to know about that? Because that's the repair of greediness and corruption in commerce and money. And Mordechai set the standard for a just, fair, and moral economy. And we needed to know that. So look what the world has done. Through the episode of Megillah Esther, the agency being the Jews, the world has become a place that no longer worships the Avodah Zarah of Mordechai. The world has become a place where there's no indulgence. We get rid of Achashverosh and we replace him with the son of Esther, who will rebuild the Beis HaMikdash. And we give the rulership in the business and commerce over to righteous, just people, particularly Mordechai, who levies tariffs and reconciles the world from its inappropriate greed and inappropriate dealings and becomes an opportunity of fairness and prosperity for all. So that's why Megillah Esther never goes away, because it's it's like when you follow a team, like if you're a sports fan, you follow a team. Maybe there's that one year where they win the championship, and you remember it your whole life because may never do it again. The Jewish people won the championship. The world won the championship under the guidance of Esther Mordechai and her son, Dayavish. And guess what? That's what's going to happen again. And that's the story of the world, because that's what ushers in the Messianic era and allows Torah to be spread. Torah and the Megillah Esther are one. because we're returning the world to where it needs to be. It's the story not of the Musar of the Nevi'im, but the story of mankind finally winning the war against evil, against Avodah Zarah. So hopefully now, these incredible events that are swirling around us, Zachor, so much to remember in terms of Jewish suffering, so much to remember in terms of the evil that was done to our people and really to the world. And it's going to get corrected. It's going to get fixed. It's Yemei Purim. The Achashverosh took out the garments of the Kohen Gadol that are described in this week's parsha and wore them in the most corrupt manner at the most lustful and disgusting event ever attended by certainly Jews. And he took the Kalim of the Kohen Gadol and he defiled them in that fashion. And he wasn't the first one to do it. But after that, they will be returned to their proper place below Yasuf, and Purim will never end. The reason why Purim will never end, because once we win, it will be the end. And that's why Megillah survives, because the other stories are stories of galus and disappointment and destruction. But we will highlight Megillah's Esther. As a Hashem, we should come to understand these two basic principles that we're saying today. There's much about Torah that we haven't seen yet, because we didn't have the eyes to see it. When Mashiach and we return to the era of Nevuah should come quickly, revelations of Torah will come, and we never even saw all the Sisrei Torah. And ironically, we know that in Megillah Esther, there's one such revelation that everybody seems to know. There are 3 large letters embedded in the names of the 10 sons of Haman, right? Tuf Shin Zayin, okay, which represents the year that the Nuremberg trials took place. Actually, it was Hoshana Rabbah, which is the judgment of the people. We never knew why those were large letters until Nuremberg. And at Nuremberg, 10 sons, 10 of the most prominent Nazis were executed. And the last one, Jules Streicher, was schlepped up to be hung, and he said, Purim Fest. 1946, I think it was 46, but according to the Jewish calendar, it was already 47, Tafshin Zayin. Yeah, because it was the fall. Lo Yasuf Mizaro. The Purim already has the entire future programmed into it. It's the vision of the perfected world that we are headed to, and it will never end. And Hashem should give us strength to be inspired and to take responsibility for ourselves and others, to lift up our game and get ready. Get ready for straightening everything out in our own lives, to conquer our taivas, to be more sincere, to be more honest, to be more loving, to be more concerned about the fate of others and feeling their pain. And in this way, we personify the gifts of Purim, Matanos Avionim, Shlach Manos, and the purpose of the Mishkan, which is to make sure that we are worthy of being in an intimate embrace with Hashem. Thank you for listening, and have a great week.
Shir Chadash